This lesson looks at tailwheel flying, very specifically using the rudder during takeoff when you're flying tailwheel. And tailwheel flying really is such good fun. It's something I recommend everyone does. Not only is it excellent fun, but it also improves your flying skill and opens up a whole new world of opportunities. So I mentioned that I'm going to show you the takeoff today. Now during the takeoff, you've got a couple of different components of yaw that make it a bit more involved than taking off in a tricycle undercarriage aircraft. There are two stages to the tailwheel takeoff, fundamentally. The first of which is where the tail wheel is on the ground. Quite an exaggerated diagram, but you've got the tail wheel on the ground and the main wheel on the ground as well. And the second stage of takeoff is where the tail wheel actually lifts off the ground, but the main wheel stays on the ground. During this first stage of takeoff, here, you've got a very large component of aerodynamic yaw, and everyone should be familiar with this because it also applies to aircraft with tricycle undercarriage as well, and it's why as you apply throttle on takeoff you have to apply right rudder. So the concept here, if I draw our aeroplane, top down view, there's our rudder, we can have a spinner and a propeller as well. This is now assuming that the propeller is turning when viewed from the cockpit in a clockwise direction, so sort of that way. As the propeller spins in that clockwise direction, the airflow corkscrews around the fuselage, like this. And it hits the fin. And as it hits that fin, it exerts a force, pushing the tail that way. The aircraft then goes to pivot around its centre of gravity here, the resultant of which is a yawing motion to the left. This has to be countered by right rudder. During the second stage of takeoff, where the tail wheel lifts off the ground, there's an aspect of gyroscopic yaw as well. The propeller, when viewed from the cockpit, spins clockwise. Here's a view from inside the cockpit of our aeroplane, poorly drawn instruments. The propeller's turning this way, like that. So if I actually draw the propeller itself, there's the blades. The propeller's rotating in this direction. Because this propeller has mass and it's rotating, it is a gyroscope and it has gyroscopic properties. One of the key gyroscopic properties here is that a force applied to a gyroscope is felt at 90 degrees in the direction of rotation. Put simply, as the aeroplane transitions from its first stage of takeoff with the tail wheel on the ground to its second stage of takeoff with the tail wheel off the ground, our propeller disc here, it's as if we've pushed the aeroplane by the top of the propeller like that to take it from one stage to the next. The result of this, if we now look at the propeller disc once again from our cockpit view, so our spinning propeller disc rotating in this direction, in pushing the very top of the propeller blade here, it's as if we're applying a force to the very top of the propeller blade here. Because it's a gyroscope, this force is felt at 90 degrees in the direction of rotation of this propeller blade. It's as if we've pushed the blade here. Thinking once again about the top-down view of this aeroplane, with our rudder and our propeller, this time it's a solid disc spinning, it's as if we've now gone and pushed the propeller here because of the gyroscopic tendency. As we push that way, the aeroplane once again pivots around its centre of gravity, and the result is another yaw to the left. This needs to be countered by more right rudder. To summarise, this means that during the first stage of takeoff, you're going to find the aeroplane yaws to the left. As the tail wheel lifts off the ground into the second stage of takeoff, the aeroplane will yaw to the left even more. So to counter this, right rudder is required. You've got to anticipate this happening. It's worth mentioning that this is all relevant for an aeroplane whose propeller rotates clockwise, as seen from the cockpit. If it goes and rotates anti-clockwise, then you simply have to reverse everything. So you'll need to apply left rudder to counter a yaw to the right hand side. This really was the briefest of introductions to flying tailwheel. Make sure you go and check out and have a look at our differences course, because that goes much more in depth as to the ins and outs of flying tailwheel and every single stage of flight. It's great fun, so go and have a look.